All right, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 7. Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good, but if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Render to all what is due them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Now Romans 13 continues what Paul began in chapter 12, which is a discussion of how those who are in Christ, who stand on Christ's righteousness and not their own, are to live in response to God's mercy. The approach that Paul has advocated for is one of living sacrifice. And here in chapter 13, Paul continues explaining what it looks like to be at peace with all men, extending this to include, surprisingly, human authorities in the government. And this does a couple of things. One, it shows you just how well-rounded of a thinker Paul is. He anticipates where his reader will go in their thinking and sort of cuts off that line of thought before they go too far. And two, it shows you what would have been a major issue for people in that day and time being under the thumb of the Roman Empire. Again, Christianity has always been countercultural in this sense. It's really sort of interesting. And Paul's logic is this: whether you agree with the government structure in place, that is the authority at that time that God has put in place, and that should be recognized. If you know anything about history, especially Jewish people under the thumb of the Roman Empire, the number of revolts and full-scale rebellions that they will be engaged in within 100 years of Paul writing this. This is a very volatile time in history. Now, this is not to say that those power structures cannot become corrupt. Again, just look at even Rome in Paul's time. And Paul himself, like Jesus, often defied those power structures and authorities by preaching the gospel when they told him to be silent. Nevertheless, Paul submitted to those authorities when they came calling with an intent to punish him, just as Jesus himself did. Sometimes Paul was let go, other times he was not. And it is a life of submission to those authorities, not necessarily a life of perfect obedience to them.